Robert, a man whose life had been marked by extraordinary financial success, often found himself adrift in the echoing silence of his grand estate, a profound sense of isolation clinging to him like a persistent shadow. Though surrounded by the trappings of wealth, a gnawing emptiness resided within him, fueled by a growing suspicion about the true nature of his family's affections. His wife, Elizabeth, moved through their opulent home with an almost regal indifference, her attention often diverted by social engagements and material acquisitions, her compliments feeling more like calculated acknowledgments of his status than genuine expressions of love. His youngest daughter, Emily, a vibrant young woman accustomed to a life of effortless luxury, seemed to view his fortune as an inexhaustible resource, her interactions with him often punctuated by requests for financial assistance or veiled expectations of future inheritance. Their conversations rarely ventured beyond superficial pleasantries and never touched upon the deeper connection Robert yearned for. In stark contrast, his eldest son, Tom, provided a consistent source of comfort and authentic connection. Tom's visits were characterized by genuine interest in his father's well-being, thoughtful conversations that delved beyond the surface, and a quiet respect that warmed Robert's often weary heart. It was in these moments with Tom that Robert felt a flicker of the love he longed for, a stark and painful reminder of its absence in his relationships with Elizabeth and Emily. This emotional chasm, this constant questioning of his wife and daughter's motives, eventually led Robert to a drastic and unsettling decision. He would orchestrate a test, a carefully constructed deception designed to unveil the true depths of their loyalty. The idea of feigning a severe illness, a debilitating condition that would strip away his power and wealth, took root in his mind. It was a gamble, a desperate attempt to discern whether their affections were tethered to his fortune or rooted in genuine familial love, a truth he desperately hoped to uncover, even if the revelation proved to be heartbreaking. The moment Robert chose to unveil his carefully constructed deception felt heavy with an almost palpable tension. He had requested the presence of Elizabeth, Emily, and Tom in the formal living room, a space usually reserved for polite formalities rather than raw emotion. As they gathered, Robert's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic rhythm of apprehension and a grim resolve echoing within him. He took a deliberate breath, the sound seeming amplified in the sudden silence, and with a carefully practiced tremor in his voice, announced the devastating news. He spoke of a recent, life-altering diagnosis, a rare and aggressive neurological disorder, delivered by a physician he had meticulously hired for this very purpose. He described the grim prognosis, a gradual decline in mobility, the increasing need for constant, specialized care, and an uncertain future. An initial wave of stunned silence washed over the room. Elizabeth's perfectly composed facade flickered for a fleeting moment, replaced by a look of genuine surprise, before a more calculating expression settled upon her features. Her carefully manicured hand fluttered to her chest as she uttered a theatrical gasp. "Oh, Robert, darling," she began, her voice dripping with a practiced sympathy that somehow failed to reach her eyes, "this is utterly unexpected. Such dreadful news." However, her subsequent words betrayed her true concerns. "What will this mean for our travel plans, Robert? We were so looking forward to the Mediterranean cruise next month. And what about the renovations to the summer house? Will this illness significantly alter our lifestyle?" Her questions hung in the air, focusing not on his suffering, but on the potential disruption to her comfortable existence. Emily's reaction was even more overtly self-absorbed. Her perfectly applied makeup seemed to crack slightly as her eyes widened in genuine alarm, her gaze fixed on some unseen point beyond her father. "Dad," she exclaimed, her voice laced with a dramatic tremor, "are you going to be, sick? Like, really, really sick? What about my graduation trip to Europe? I've been planning it for months. And what about the new car I wanted? Will we still be able to afford it if you need all this care?" Her anxieties revolved entirely around the potential impact on her own privileged life, revealing a stark lack of empathy for her father's plight. Amidst their expressions of superficial concern and self-absorption, Tom's reaction stood out like a beacon of genuine light. His face, usually relaxed and good-natured, was etched with deep worry. His brow furrowed with genuine distress, and without hesitation, he stepped forward, his hand finding his father's shoulder in a gesture of immediate and heartfelt support. "Dad, I am so incredibly sorry to hear this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Don't worry about any trips or renovations or cars right now. What matters is you. What can I do? How can I help you through this? We'll figure everything else out, together." The stark contrast between Tom's selfless concern and the self-centered anxieties of Elizabeth and Emily resonated deeply within Robert, a painful confirmation of his long-held fears, yet also a source of unexpected comfort in his son's unwavering loyalty. The stage was set, and Robert braced himself for the unfolding drama, his heart heavy with the weight of his deception and the uncertain future it held. The immediate aftermath of Robert's somber announcement saw a flurry of activity, mostly orchestrated by Elizabeth, who initially seemed determined to project the image of a devoted wife. She made numerous phone calls, ostensibly to arrange for the best medical care, and even spent an afternoon researching the supposed rare neurological disorder online, though Robert suspected her search history was more focused on the potential impact on their social engagements than the intricacies of the disease itself. She swiftly hired a round-the-clock nurse, a move that conveniently absolved her of any direct, hands-on care. However, as the days turned into weeks and Robert's carefully feigned symptoms began to escalate, a slight but persistent tremor in his hands that he exaggerated at opportune moments, occasional dramatic stumbles that required assistance, and increasingly frequent complaints of debilitating fatigue, Elizabeth's initial burst of concern began to wane. Her visits to his room became shorter, punctuated by sighs and thinly veiled complaints about the disruption to her meticulously planned routine. She'd often remark on the difficulty of hosting her usual elaborate dinner parties with a sick-room atmosphere permeating the house, conveniently overlooking the fact that the hired nurse handled the vast majority of Robert's needs. Beneath her veneer of wifely duty, a resentment simmered, fueled by the inconvenience and the unwelcome shift in focus from her own desires to her ailing husband. Emily, meanwhile, remained cocooned in her world of youthful self-absorption. Her responses to her father's supposed decline ranged from fleeting, almost obligatory visits to outright avoidance. She would occasionally flit into his room, her attention more focused on her phone than on him, offering a perfunctory "How are you feeling, Dad?" before launching into a monologue about her latest social triumphs or lamenting the depressing atmosphere that was apparently cramping her style. Her social media feed continued to chronicle a vibrant life of parties, shopping trips, and outings with friends, a stark and insensitive contrast to the image of her father battling a debilitating illness upstairs. Robert couldn't help but notice the carefully curated joy on her Instagram stories, a digital testament to her detachment from his supposed suffering. He wondered if a part of her, perhaps subconsciously, sensed the theatrical nature of his ailment, or if she was simply incapable of looking beyond her own immediate needs and desires. Amidst this emotional detachment from his wife and daughter, Tom emerged as an unwavering pillar of support. He immediately adjusted his demanding work schedule, carving out significant chunks of time to spend with his father. He would patiently sit by Robert's side, assisting with the prescribed, and entirely fabricated, exercises, reading aloud from Robert's favorite books, and engaging in genuine, heartfelt conversations that had become increasingly rare with the rest of the family. He diligently researched the supposed neurological disorder, poring over medical articles and asking the nurse informed and insightful questions, demonstrating a sincere desire to understand the challenges his father was facing and to find ways to alleviate his discomfort. Robert observed these interactions with a complex mix of emotions. A profound sense of gratitude for Tom's unwavering love and dedication warmed his heart, while a deep and bitter disappointment in the self-centeredness of Elizabeth and Emily settled like a heavy weight in his chest. The charade was emotionally draining, the constant acting taking its toll, but the stark and undeniable clarity it was providing about the true nature of his family's affections was a revelation, albeit a painful one. As the weeks bled into a couple of months, a sense of weary resignation began to settle over Robert, punctuated only by the genuine warmth of Tom's visits. He decided it was time to introduce another layer to his intricate charade, a financial element that he suspected would further strip away any remaining pretense of affection from Elizabeth and Emily. During a quiet afternoon visit from Tom, while Elizabeth was attending a charity luncheon and Emily was, predictably, Out with friends, Robert leaned towards his son, his voice a carefully constructed whisper of worry. "Tom," he began, his gaze lowered as if burdened by a heavy secret, "there's something rather concerning the specialist shared with me recently." He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in. "It appears the treatment for this condition is far more complex and, frankly, far more expensive than we initially anticipated. My insurance, it turns out, only covers a fraction of the costs, and the out-of-pocket expenses are going to be, well, they're going to be substantial. Potentially draining." Robert watched Tom's face closely, observing the immediate furrow of his brow, the genuine concern that clouded his eyes. Tom reached out and placed a reassuring hand on his father's arm. "Dad, I'm so sorry to hear that. Don't worry about the money, we'll figure this out. I have some savings, and I'm more than happy to contribute whatever I can. Your health is the only thing that truly matters." Robert felt a pang of guilt at his deception, but Tom's unwavering support only strengthened his resolve to see his test through. A few days later, Robert casually broached the subject of the escalating medical bills during a rare and somewhat strained family dinner. Elizabeth, impeccably dressed as always, paused mid-sentence, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arching with a hint of alarm. Her initial reaction was carefully modulated, a blend of concern and a subtle undercurrent of self-preservation. "Substantial, Robert?" she inquired, her voice laced with a delicate tremor of worry. "Just how substantial are we talking about? This could seriously impact our finances, you know. We had plans for that investment property in Florida, and the renovations to the master bathroom are still pending." Robert noted the subtle emphasis on their finances and their plans, a clear indication of where her priorities truly lay. Emily, who had been scrolling through her phone, looked up abruptly, her expression a mixture of boredom and dawning anxiety. Her perfectly manicured fingernails tapped nervously against her water glass as she exclaimed, her voice tinged with a note of panic, "Draining? Dad, does this mean there might not be as much left for, later?" Her gaze flickered between her father and the untouched slice of gourmet cake on her plate, a tangible representation of her ingrained expectation of future wealth. Neither Elizabeth nor Emily offered a single word about contributing their own resources. Their concerns were solely focused on the potential erosion of their entitled future and the possible curtailment of their current lavish lifestyle. Robert watched them, a profound sadness washing over him, the confirmation of his deepest fears cutting sharper than any imagined physical pain. Tom, seated beside him, quietly reiterated his offer to help, his simple words of support a stark and poignant contrast to the self-serving anxieties emanating from his mother and sister. The introduction of financial strain, even a fabricated one, had served its purpose, further illuminating the true values of his family and steeling Robert's determination to see his experiment to its bitter end. As Robert's carefully crafted charade of illness progressed, he subtly increased his demands, feigning a growing reliance on others for even the simplest of daily tasks. He would deliberately call out for assistance getting out of bed in the mornings, his voice laced with a theatrical weakness, knowing full well that Elizabeth was usually enjoying her leisurely breakfast and Emily was still fast asleep. Elizabeth, while initially offering a few perfunctory inquiries from the doorway, quickly grew impatient with these requests. In her mind, such menial tasks were beneath her station, the domain of hired help. She would often sigh audibly, her perfectly coiffed hair barely concealing her annoyance, citing a packed schedule of crucial appointments, a charity auction, a lunch with friends, a vital shopping trip, as reasons for her inability to assist. She'd then conveniently delegate the responsibility, her gaze sweeping towards Tom with a practiced air of expectation. "Tom, dear," she'd say, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that Robert found increasingly grating, "since you're so wonderfully attentive, perhaps you could help your father with that? I really must dash. Mrs. Henderson is expecting me at the club by 10. Beneath her polished exterior, Robert sensed a growing resentment, a feeling that his illness was an unwelcome burden on her carefully constructed life of leisure. Emily, in her own way, exhibited an even more profound detachment. Her responses to her father's feigned decline were marked by a complete lack of empathy and a deep-seated sense of entitlement. She would offer occasional, fleeting visits to his room, her attention invariably fixed on her phone, offering a mumbled, "Hey, Dad," before launching into a lengthy description of her latest social triumphs or complaining about the totally depressing vibes in the house that were, in her opinion, ruining her social life. Whenever Robert feigned a need for more personal assistance, she would invariably plead illness herself, a sudden headache, a mysterious stomachache, an urgent need to study for a non-existent exam, conveniently disappearing whenever the prospect of actual caregiving arose. Robert often observed her through half-closed eyes, watching her flit out of the house, dressed in the latest fashions, while he lay in bed pretending to be incapacitated. He wondered if she possessed any capacity for genuine concern or if her world revolved solely around her own immediate gratification and social standing among her peers. In stark contrast to their self-absorption, Tom's response was nothing short of remarkable. He readily and willingly stepped up to meet his father's every need, no matter how personal or demanding. Without a hint of complaint, he would help Robert with his morning routine, ensuring he was comfortable and had everything within reach. He never hesitated to sit with his father during meals, offering cheerful conversation and gentle encouragement when Robert pretended to struggle with his food. He meticulously learned the schedule for the fake medication, administering it with a quiet competence that reassured Robert. He even took the initiative to research the supposed symptoms, asking thoughtful questions of the nurse and demonstrating a genuine desire to understand his father's supposed suffering. One afternoon, Robert decided to further test their commitment by feigning a particularly debilitating spell, claiming he desperately wanted to watch his favorite classic movie in the living room but lacked the strength to get downstairs. Elizabeth offered a perfunctory suggestion to simply watch it on his bedroom television, while Emily mumbled an excuse about having friends coming over and promptly retreated to her room. Without a word, Tom gently but firmly supported his father, carefully guiding him down the stairs, his strong arm a steady presence beneath Robert's feigned weakness, and settled him comfortably on the sofa, his presence a quiet and unwavering reassurance. As Robert leaned against his son, a wave of profound emotion washed over him. Deep gratitude for Tom's selfless love mingled with a sharp pang of sadness for the vast emotional gulf that separated him from his wife and daughter. The charade was undeniably painful, but the stark and undeniable truth it was revealing about the true nature of his family was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore.